Gyfeillion Conference, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to address you at this crucial period ahead of local elections in May, the first political test since the EU referendum, and within days of what will likely be the triggering of the Article 50 process. That will be the biggest test of the durability of Welsh nationhood since 1979. And it's a pleasure, of course, a special pleasure, that Plaid Cymru Spring Conference is here in my home county of Gwent and in the town of my birth. When I was born here in Newport, not that long ago, I hasten to add, this place was a town, not a city, and our national expression did not extend to political life. But when my son was born in the very same ward as me just a couple of years ago, he was born into a place that had grown into a city and a country that had found political expression through a parliament of its own. And long before he has a family of his own, it is my determination that the city of their birth will be a bustling economic centre and their nation will enjoy the dignity and opportunity that comes with being an independent country. Often when conferences or political gatherings are held in the city of Newport, references to the Chartist Rising prove irresistible, and rightly so, and indeed Leanne Wood addressed those events in her speech. The events that took place just a few hundred metres from here are in our national consciousness because they truly changed the course of history for working people. But some 6 decades later, another political event took place here, a turning point in Wales's political journey. It was the annual gathering of the South Wales and Monmouthshire Liberal Federation, attended by Lloyd George, who was determined to bring Wales's 2 Liberal federations together as a national movement on the platform of Cymru Fydd and Home Rule. That meeting was vicious, exposing divisions in Lloyd George's party, and ultimately it resulted in the abandonment of Home Rule for Wales for a generation. That is until the formation of Plaid Gynhadledd Cymru in 1925. So it could be argued that without the events of 1896 in Newport, then we would not be congregated here in Newport today as Plaid Cymru in 2017. But sadly, there is a common theme between Wales 1896 and the Wales of 2017. In the aftermath of that referendum last year, Wales is divided, and that division is being picked upon shamelessly by political vultures in Westminster and the populist right, who seek to exploit the economic and social circumstances of our people to further their own narrow aims. But with local elections now upon us, we have the best possible opportunity to heal our country, reunite our people, and rebuild our communities. And it is at that community level, the hyperlocal, where Plaid Cymru must demonstrate that politics, progressive politics, can work for people, can deliver real improvements in their day-to-day lives, where we can empower those who feel that they no longer have a stake in their own futures. Labour and the Tories have long taken large swathes of our country for granted. They anticipate electoral success because of the colour of their rosettes and not because of the efforts they put in at local level. And that arrogance and complacency has in great part led to the critical breakdown in trust in the political process that we see today. And so too, friends, is their behaviour in office. People are rightly incensed by actions at local and national level on the part of those in power. Just take one example from Caerphilly County Borough. When Westminster austerity was beginning to bite and when opportunities were being squeezed, when a new generation for the first time looked set to be worse off than the previous one, Plaid Cymru-led council in Caerphilly introduced an apprenticeship scheme for local people, using the unique position of local government to open up opportunities for young people to gain skills and experience and a chance at well-paid, long-term secure employment. And then Labour regained control of Caerphilly Council, and the so-called Party of Working People abolished the council apprenticeship scheme, and they did so quietly, no public announcement. It took a Freedom of Information request from Plaid Cymru to shed light on their cowardly deeds. They found millions to deal with senior officers' pay scandal, but not a penny for providing apprenticeships for local people. And Conference, the people of Caerphilly can rest assured that when Plaid Cymru regain control of the local authority in May, priorities will be reset, and we will never turn our backs on our obligation to provide a future for young people. And friends, I have to say that I'm growing increasingly concerned about the economic prospects of our people at a national level as well. The Labour government in Cardiff is still yet to produce an economic or industrial plan for this country. 10 months after taking office, 9 months since the referendum, and we are still waiting. But even when that plan is produced, I fear for what will be included in it, because we've already seen signs in terms of their direction of travel. For the North, its fate will be subcontracted to the English Northern powerhouse. For Mid Wales, the government said last summer that its economic fortunes would rest with the Midlands of England. For everyone else, the plan is to get us to Cardiff or Swansea for work slightly more quickly. Some have asked me that if this is indeed the plan, then what's the point of devolution? And my response is, if this really is the government's plan, then what is the point in Welsh Labour? I welcome the City deal, and I'm an advocate of cooperation between local areas, including cross-border cooperation. But what Wales needs now is what Plaid Cymru has been advocating since at least the 1960s, a place-based economic plan centred on spreading job creation opportunities and redistributing wealth. The great opportunity of nation building that excites us is that it gives us the chance to use our young democracy to give all corners of our country a stake in our national success story. There's absolutely no reason why the Welsh Revenue Authority couldn't have been located in the north. And when justice and policing are finally devolved in this country, there is no reason at all why we cannot proclaim a town or city outside the capital to be our centre for justice, where the Justice Ministry could be located and where our high courts could be housed. And here in this very city, we have the outstanding Cybersecurity Academy and soon a digital science campus. There's no reason why Newport should not be designated as Wales's cyber and digital capital. Such opportunities can, of course, spread outside our major urban centres too, and it is wrong to think that the future of places such as Caerphilly, Blackwood, Ebervale, Pontypool is to simply serve others as dormitory towns. We need a Welsh government prepared to show its faith in our towns and cities to give the private sector and would-be investors the opportunity to believe that the whole of our nation is indeed open for business. Plaid Cymru believes in all of Wales's communities. The future of all our cherished communities are, of course, bound up in the biggest macro-political issue of our day, our withdrawal and future relationship with the European Union. And since we last convened as a conference, Plaid Cymru co-authored and co-published a national white paper for Wales. As Shadow Secretary for External Affairs, I led negotiations with the Welsh Government, and I was pleased to be in a position to recommend to colleagues and to the party that we proceed to publication. You know, I think it's worth reminding ourselves where Wales was in those weeks after the referendum. Our country had voted by a narrow majority to leave, giving Wales little political leverage with Westminster compared to Scotland and Northern Ireland. The Welsh Government line was to prioritise immigration controls ahead of the economic interests of Wales. Indeed, at one point, it was suggested by them that we should have a 10-year moratorium on free movement of people. In one day, the Welsh Government had 3 different positions on the single market, ranging from a free trade agreement with Europe to EEA status. And Wales's Parliament became the first in these islands to vote for a hard Brexit. Wales was being failed, and conference, we could not, as patriots or progressives, allow Wales to be kept in a position of such vulnerability where the Tories felt they could do as they please. Immediately after the referendum, Plaid Cymru convened a special conference and adopted a resolution which outlined our preferred outcome for Wales and indeed the whole of these islands. Every single clause in the resolution passed at that special conference relating to our preferred vision for Wales for the future and our relationship with Europe is included in Wales's national white paper. Single market membership, a hands-off message to London in terms of Welsh devolution, a UK Council of Ministers, a new international policy for Wales, the full transfer of powers from Brussels to Cardiff with no pit stops in London, and the unconditional right to remain for all European Union citizens in Wales. Because of that intervention, Wales has a clear position today, the right position. And I can tell you that Wales's white paper isn't just being noted in the capitals of these islands, but across Europe. Because of our decision to step up, Plaid Cymru now has a direct channel of communication with the Brexit Department in Whitehall, and we will for the duration of negotiations with the European Union. On Monday, I, along with David Wigley and Jonathan Edwards, attended our first bilateral with the Brexit Department in Downing Street, and we made it clear to them, conference, that they'd better keep their hands off Welsh devolution. In this respect, the first major test for the UK government will be their plan for how the UK single market should be governed in the future. There hasn't been a UK single market in reality since 1972, and of course at that time there was no devolution. There will need to be common frameworks for administering the UK single market, as they will almost exclusively relate to devolved functions. They must all, though, be agreed by all the governments of the UK and not imposed by the UK government. This point has been made clear in the Welsh White Paper. We advocate a UK Council of Ministers to agree and to oversee the governance of the UK single market. And conference, it's alarming to me that when I asked a UK Brexit minister about this, about who would administer the UK single market after we withdraw, his response to me in public session of the External Affairs Committee in the Assembly was that he hadn't given it a moment's thought. That's not good enough. We will not accept any attempt to impose common frameworks from London on the nations of the UK under any circumstances. It was Gwynfor Evans who first proposed a Council of Ministers to govern the UK single market back in the early 60s. It was the right policy then, and it is the right one now. The mood music so far from the UK government and the faceless Britocrats in London is far from encouraging. In the past weeks, their rhetoric is getting harsher, internally in the UK and indeed with our partners on the continent. This is reckless and irresponsible, and we have a duty to call it out. We have a responsibility to expose their hypocrisy. Jeremy Corbyn, the so-called leader of the opposition in Westminster, has advocated a hard border between England and a future independent Scotland. Theresa May, in her pursuit of a kamikaze Brexit, is risking a frontier on the island of Ireland that risks the peace process there. Doesn't it tell us everything we need to know about politics in these islands today, that it is nationalists from Wales, Ireland and Scotland who are arguing against barriers, against frontiers, against borders and against tariffs, but it is British unionism, left and right, that is arguing for division, isolation and detachment? Conference, we're living in an age where politics is seeking to polarise, where the temptation and the trend is to retreat into populism or to extremism or to dance to a tune of us and them. Indeed, I began my contribution to you this afternoon by referencing the division in Welsh politics at the end of the 19th century that proved so costly it almost costs us Wales as a political entity. Plaid Cymru's role in the coming period is not to retreat into a comfort zone or to play a game of polarisation. It's not our job to feed the politics of despair, quite the opposite. Our role is to reach out, to broaden our movement, to bring people together around shared vision for our communities and our countries. That's about appealing to the best in each other, not playing on our worst fears. The way we do that, when Plaid Cymru is at its best, is when it works in community to break down barriers and instill a shared confidence in our people. My old friend, the great Phil Williams, used to say that Wales was just the right size for loving. What he meant was that despite the challenging geography of our country, we were the right size for a country where every community to matter, to have a stake and a place in our national project. He was right, and in May we've got that opportunity to do just that, because we've always been a bottom-up party, never a trickle-down party. Building alliances in our communities leads to an opportunity to awaken the national consciousness. In that fateful meeting that I mentioned that took place in this city back in 1896, a Cymru Fydd councillor from Pontllanfraith, Morgan Walters, rose to his feet in defence of the cause of Home Rule and in defence of Welsh nationhood. And he said, "Are we to bow the knee? We are here today to be united as a nation, and to be dominated by anyone, however great, Welsh people will not endure it any longer." Let us take that message, that call for unity to every community in our country, and let us unleash the endless possibility of local and national empowerment. Diolch yn fawr iawn.